Welcome to our Back to School webinar series. We are going to be covering today Glencoe Math grade 6 to 8. Having said that, we know that most of you in the sessions are from grade 9 to 12. This duration of the session is going to be an hour, so we will end at an hour from now. Actually, probably 15 minutes past, but we're open to question answers in the end as well. My name is Sarah Shuja, and I'm the marketing manager at McGraw Hill. I'm here to support you in the background. If you have any questions or if you face any technical difficulties during the session, please do let me know, and I will be there to support you during the session. I have with me Shelly McClan. Thank you, Shelly, for being here today with us.
Absolutely.
She's a national mathematics consultant, and she has been a curriculum specialist for McGraw Hill since 2007. So that's a long time. I'm so glad that she could share her experience with us today. And I'm very happy that she could take the time out because it's very early for her as well. She's done active involvement and commitment to high standards and done numerous workshops in the past as well. Thank you, Shelly, for being here once again.
You're very welcome. Glad to be here.
Okay, just a couple of housekeeping slides because I know they never get old. I just want to make sure a lot of people mentioned in our previous sessions that you are seeing the screen blank. So when the presenter is sharing their screen, just make sure you log out and log back in. It usually always works. So if you're seeing the screen blank, just log out of the session and try to log in again. We will be sharing the recording of this session with the participants, so you will have that in your inbox. It will be sent via email. You will also get the certificate for attending the session as well. We're welcome to ask question and answers in the Q&A box that's right on the right side of your screen, and we can cover them towards the end of the session. Equally, you can see there's a chat box that you can make sure you interact with the presenter. We want to make this as interactive as possible and make sure you have a great time during the session. So utilize the chat box and the Q&A box. And yes, let me know if you have any questions. I can stop sharing at this point. Quickly look at the chat box if there's anything for me. Can you please share the link to share with our finds? I think you mean to say the link to this session. So this session, everyone has a unique link. You'll have to register for the session in order to get the link. If your colleagues want to join the session, there is a link that they have to register on. So we don't have a generic link. There is a link that they need to register on, and then they will have the joining link. So I can put that in the chat box for you. So you have to select, there are about, I think, 10 sessions that we ran for back to school. You'll have to select Glencoe Math, and then you will get the registration link in your inbox. Thank you so much. I'm here in the background if you need any support. Thank you, Shelly. Over to you.
Well, thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here. I do have a couple of different screens that are open. So because there are some small subtle differences between the kind of the resources or what you might see as a teacher, whether you're teaching the middle school, the grade 6-8, or whether you're teaching the grades 9-12. So I will kind of point out and let you know exactly which one I am on at a time. But I'm going to start first with the grade 6-8. We'll just kind of go in numerical order. The book itself is something, or the experience is going to be the same when you log on, when your students log on. You'll see this main dashboard that's there. And the very first thing most people do, and that I try to do, is be sure that you all are familiar with what you can see in the ebook itself. So when I'm in the Teacher Center for the grade 6-8 and I go to the ebook, I get a version of the student edition. And this version of the student edition, it's exactly what your students would be able to see, with one key exception that you all have as a teacher, and that is right down here in the bottom left corner. You have the ability to turn the answers on and off, and that'll make a little bit more sense in just a little bit. But I wanted to tell you just in general how the books themselves are laid out. You're always going to see for all grades 6-12, you're going to see we always provide you with an essential question, always something to relate the math to the real world to start off. And then you're also going to see a reference to foldables. So whether you're grade 6-8, where the foldables are in the back of the book, or whether you're 9-12, where the foldables are something that students would do on notebook paper or perhaps graph paper. A foldable is a three-dimensional graphic organizer that really helps your students in understanding the math and really starting to organize their notes. And I know that it's always something, no matter what country you're in, students are not always as organized and taking notes as we could help them be. So that's where that's going to be. The books themselves, generally when you see them, they're going to be in what we call a 2-page view. And to navigate, you'll click across the very bottom and you will switch those over to a 1-page view. And then you are able to change the pages by using the arrows on the left and right hand side of the screen. As I turn the page, you'll see that no matter what grade level you're in, we're always going to start with the vocabulary. And at grade 6-8, we're going to give some sort of study skill that's going to be there. So some way to help start to unlock the vocabulary for the students. As we turn forward, we're going to have an anticipation guide built into the middle school level as to what do you already know, because a lot of what they're doing is kind of a building upon, or all of it's going to be a building upon what they've learned in previous grade levels, but we're really going to help them start to put that together. And then a great feature that we have in all of our books is kind of when will you use this? So just to help set the understanding of to where this math is used in the real world. As I turn forward, whether you're middle school or high school, you're always going to see something that says, are you ready? Or getting ready for the chapter. And so this is going to give kind of a little bit of a quick reminder of a prerequisite skill that they should have. And then they will be given some problems that they can check on their, that they can do on their own. And then down across the bottom, you're going to notice it says, how did you do? So it's a great way for students to really take some accountability into what they are doing. As I turn forward a page, you're going to see that most or many of the middle school lessons are going to start with an inquiry lab. So I'm going to just go over here on the left-hand side into my little drop-down menu over here so you can see the table of contents. And no matter what chapter, no matter what section it is that you're in, you're going to see that there are going to be these different inquiry labs. And I always encourage teachers not to skip those. We tend to say, oh, well, it might not be, if I'm going to be giving the students the information, they won't need to go through and do those types of inquiry labs on their own. But I always tell teachers, these are the most, these are the one of the best resources that you can utilize with your students, because it's most of the time it's very hands-on for them. They might be working on it in small groups, but it is when they have the opportunity to have those, what I call aha moments, where they discover something about the math. Will they always discover the exact right thing? No, but it's about giving them an opportunity to investigate and to analyze and reflect. And as I zoom in a little bit on the screen, I want you to notice that when we investigate, they're doing this in pairs or maybe in small groups. But then we always have them come back after they've done these hands-on activities. And after they've done that analyze and reflect, whoops, we scooch back a page there, they're always going to create their own mathematical meaning. So you'll see, and the students will see in their book, whether they're doing something collaboratively or whether they are doing something individually. So it's always going to kind of incorporate both of those for the students. And then the lesson that follows immediately after an inquiry lab is going to be more of what you might think of as more of a direct instruction type of problem. I'm going to switch quickly over to the Algebra 1 book and show you that it is very much the same type of experience. We're always going to set some sort of real life context behind that. Let me switch to a single page view here, and I will zoom in a little bit. You're going to see the then and the now, the then, now, and the why behind the mathematics. Then it's going to mention to them the foldables, They also incorporate a lot of things using the Geometer Sketchpad, which is a dynamic software, letting students manipulate variables. And this is something that is available to you free of charge. I'll show you where that's at. The RE toolkit has those, and lots of just opportunities for students to be hands-on. So they're going to get ready for the chapter just like we did in the middle school program and see that vocabulary. And then they're going to get into the lessons. If I go to my table of contents on the left-hand side, and I were to open up any of these chapters that are there, you're going to see that even these have those explore activities that are there. So we call them inquiry at 6-8, and we call them explore at 9-12, but they are still going to give the students the same type of hands-on, minds-on experiences that really help them understand the mathematics. Now, you'll see that we always try to set the context for the student so that they have an understanding of where that lesson is used in the real world, the vocabulary, the mathematical practices, and you'll see that we build these concepts up. We're always looking at how can we create really good examples as well as really good notes that go along with those. So this is our middle school, this is our Algebra 1 book, and our middle school book does exactly the same type of thing. There's real world links, and then followed by key concepts and examples. Now, one thing I hope you'll notice when I click between both of them is down here across the bottom, there are a series of different icons, and these are all support resources that are built into the lessons. And depending on the page that you're on, will depend on which icons are active across the bottom. So if they're colored in, the students would be able to click on any of those icons. One very important support resource that you're going to see that accompanies every single example in the student edition is that for each example, there is a personal tutor. So here I can see examples and I see tutor, and I can see this same exact icon down here on the student tray across the bottom. And a tutor is simply a teacher working students step by step through an example.
Hello, this is
the one that is inside their book. So these do have audio that go along with them. And if I speed this up, you're going to see that this is very much like
turning around and adding 5.
Teach your students in your classroom. It's going to give the same sort of example. And the great part of this is that it is meant so that when a student goes home, or if a student was absent and they need some help in understanding that, they would be able to hear and see an alternate example that goes along with it. So you're going to see that at both the middle school program, and you'll see that at the 9-12 program. So here you're going to see the same icon for a tutor. It's down here across the bottom. And then some of the examples in both groups are going to have extra icons. And so this one means that this one's got a little kind of a play button. So as I scroll down here, this is actually a video or some sort of interactive. And so there's a variety of different
consistent. A system of
through the different resources that are there. And I'll show you another way that you can get and see all of them at one time. But I always like to start out in the student edition because I think it's really important to point out to the students that they have resources to help them every single step of the way as they are working in their books. So whether they are in a grade 6-8 situation, or whether they are in a grades 9-12 course, then they would actually have the support resources are built in here across the bottom. Now, if you are a grade 6-8 teacher, I want to call out that the super secret button that you have is down here in the lower left-hand corner, and that is the ability to turn the answers on and to turn the answers off. So even though it looks like you're accessing the student edition, you'll know that you're in your teacher's edition because you're going to have this button down here that says answers on and off. And that is just there for the middle school program. But I will show you that at grades 9-12, you also have a resource that will let you project the answers as well as full worked out step-by-step solutions if you choose. So the different icons, anytime a student or you, the teacher, anytime you click any of these icons across the bottom, it's going to link you over into our resources section. Now, one additional resource that you're going to see at the student level is that we provide what's called e-help for the students. So you're going to see at the middle school level, you're going to see this little house. And in the Algebra 1 book, you're going to see that some of the examples have a green circle around them. And that simply means that there is a fully worked out step-by-step solution for them at the 9-12 level. It's going to be in the back of the book for the students. And at the middle school level, it is actually going to be an icon that's down here across the bottom, and they can see a full worked out step-by-step solution to those selected problems. So this is wonderful, again, for that student who might be absent and needs to see some additional examples, or just the student who needs some reassurance as they are starting their homework that they are doing things correctly. So that, in a nutshell, is exactly what you can see in the ebook. But I wanted you to notice that every time I clicked an icon across the bottom, it was actually linking me over to a resources page. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and close out of the student edition. I'm going to go back to my dashboard. We'll start here with the middle school level. And when we click the menu in the upper left-hand corner, it moves over to the side, and you can see that these are hyperlinks to specific shortcuts in your program. So class management is, of course, where your roster is going to be found. You'll see that there is a calendar that you can add things to the calendar. And as a teacher, you do have lesson plans that are pre-made, and I'll come back to these in just a moment. I want to go first to this button that says resources. So if you are watching this later on and you are joining, you can click resources. It's always going to be that third option down. And this is, especially for those of you who are brand new, this is a really good way to get familiar with the resources that are available for your particular program and the lesson that you are about to teach. So it always consists of these two drop-down menus. So you're going to choose the section and the lesson. And it doesn't matter whether you're grade 6-8, this one, or whether you are grades 9-12. Let me get into my teacher one here. Doesn't matter which one you're in, that third option down is going to be your resources. So be sure as you do some exploration that you notice that when we look at this, it starts always with a chapter overview. So in the chapter overview, this is where you're going to find different resources that support the teaching of the entire chapter. So here you're going to see kind of an anticipation guide. Again, something you see at both middle school and high school. You're going to see that all of the courses have a chapter project that you can use. And then I encourage people to be sure that they take a look down here in the lower right-hand corner, because sometimes there are multiple pages of 12 resources, or you could simply switch this to 48. And sometimes there might be one additional page, but generally you'll get an opportunity to see everything that is there. So you're going to see things like our graphic novels that are kind of a comic book or cartoonish kind of way to explain the content that they are about to learn. So that's the chapter overview. If I switch here instead and go into a particular lesson, you'll see that these are all of the resources that support the teaching of the lesson itself. So we'll start up here at the top. So notice this is that icon that is that kind of that play button that's there. And this is where there are some animations. There are some of the worked out examples are going to be here for the students. They would be able to see different parts of this. So sometimes it's a example that's inside the book. Sometimes it is a video that goes through and explains the content to the students. So you'll see that these are always going to be organized in these categories, and then you can see them here on the side. One of the super exciting resources that exists, you'll see a lot in the 9-12 program, are these interactives. And with these interactives, they are just opportunities for students to manipulate different variables in a problem and be able to see the result of the manipulation of those variables. So these will often go in conjunction with the explore activities that the students are doing. And then a lot of times teachers will actually just bring these up in their teaching discussion and just give students the opportunity to, what I like to say, is to tinker with the mathematics. Just below those, you're going to see there are those personal tutors that we had that were organized for each one of the examples. So I can quickly tell that this lesson 6.1, has 3 examples because I have these 3 personal tutors, including ones that show students how to do the mathematics on graphing calculators. And we provide these in both English and in Spanish. Just below that, you're going to see we're starting to move into the worksheet resources that we have. Now, the middle school, the grade 6-8 book is a book that it is a interactive book. Students are writing in their book. So one of the things that we know that our high school teachers needed were some way for students to take notes. So at the very beginning of every one of the lessons, there is going to be a study notebook. So this is to help students understand and really kind of help organize their work. So a lot of people will provide these to the students or even use these as a display tool in the classroom. But there is one of these that goes along with every lesson to really support the note-taking skills of the student. So it's always called the study notebook worksheet. Then you're going to see that for each and every one of the lessons, in addition to that study notebook, we are going to provide 5 different worksheets that you can utilize with your students in your classes. And we are going to provide those worksheets as Word documents so that you can edit them if you want. You're going to see them as PDF documents so that they will print a little easier if you wanted to print them. And what are those worksheets? Well, one tip that I will give you is as you roll your mouse over the words with anything, it'll give you a little bit of an indication as to what that resource is. So a study guide and intervention worksheet is just working on previewing the concepts. So this is something that I'll open it up as a Word document here. And you can see it's always going to give some teaching. It's always going to give an example. And then it's going to give students example problems to do on their own. So this is what we call study guide and intervention. Some people like to use that instead of the questions that are inside the book or instead of utilizing the study notebook, but you'll find what resources are best for your students. I generally suggest this is a really good resource for any of your students who have been absent or who may have struggled with the content, because this gives those extra examples that are there. Then you're going to see that you have 2 or 3 worksheets that kind of deal with different levels. So this is a skills practice worksheet. It focuses on the basic skills of the particular lesson. The practice worksheet is going to help students with with a little bit more on level. So it's not all skills-based types of questions. It's going to be a mixture of skills and applications. Whereas the word problem practice is going to focus more on just the applications. So you have skills and applications, and then you have the applications. Now, this worksheet right here, this one that's called the practice worksheet, is probably my favorite one. And it is my favorite because it has also been put into a digital format in our assessment center, which means that you could assign a digital version of this worksheet and students' homework could be graded for you. You could choose to offer the students feedback as they are working on problems. But this one, for those of you who want to go a little bit more digitally, this is a really good one to choose to use for that digital experience. Now, I still want my students to work things out paper pencil, but they could turn their work in utilizing these problems, but they could have gotten the instant feedback if they use the digital experience. So I always want to call teachers' attention to this one. Then you're also going to see that there's always going to be an enrichment activity that goes along with the lessons. Some of them are kind of like a fun game kind of format, but they always provide some sort of opportunity to extend the lesson. So if you teach advanced groups of students, you might choose to use this as maybe an extra resource that you use to extend that knowledge. Now, because this lesson is systems of equations and students would or could be utilizing a graphing calculator, we even provide things like graphing calculator worksheets that show them exactly how to use and then some additional practice problems on utilizing that. So again, at least 5 worksheets for every one of the lessons, middle school and high school. And then you're going to have them as PDF and Word documents to be able to use. Those of you teaching grade 6-8, because I know we have kind of a little bit, we've got about a third of you are utilizing grade 6-8. I'll show you, you have the same exact thing. So here are your personal tutors, and then here are your worksheets. So you're going to see that you have one that's called a reteach worksheet, and that is pretty much like that study guide and intervention one that we had. We switch this to 48 resources. Then you're going to see the skills practice, the homework practice. And again, this one has also been digitized for you to be able to give online homework. Problem solving is going to be more of those word problems. And then you're going to have enrichment. And you all actually get one extra one that's called extra practice. And it's just some extra skills that are going to go along with that. But you can see that you have those different resources. Now, while I'm here, grade 6-8 teachers, if you are teaching advanced students, you might choose to utilize these resources. They're not necessarily with every lesson, but they are with many of the lessons. And this provides a problem-based learning activity for you to utilize with your students. So if you want to look at more of a problem-based type of understanding for your students, you might choose to utilize these problem-based learning resources. So you'll know that that lesson has it. If you look at the little plus sign that's there, and you'll see it says problem-based. So most of them, but not necessarily all of them, but it is an alternative teaching resource for you. If you are going to utilize these problem-based resource activities, you will want to utilize these before the teaching of the lesson, because once students have gone through the lesson itself, it kind of gives away a lot of what students are doing in the problem-based learning activity. So you might want to do this in lieu of the explore activity, the inquiry activity, or just after the inquiry activity is a perfect place to bring these in as well. You'll see that there are Sketchpad resources. And so these are the particular resources that you would use if you wanted to use the Sketchpad activities. I'll give you a little bit more information about that in just a moment. But everything that you need for teaching your students is right here. And this is what I was talking about. If you're going to use Sketchpad, we give you the license for that to be able to download. So it doesn't matter whether you're at the middle school level or at the algebra, geometry, and algebra 2 level. You have very much the same types of resources that you can use in your classes with your students. I'm going to pause right there for just a second, and because I don't see that if there are any questions coming in. Shavasha, has anything come in that we need to address?
No, not really. Just people saying that thank you so much for the lesson. The lessons are really lovely, very interesting to see them.
Great, great. It just is very easy to be able to use, but I do encourage you to come into here and to look, because each lesson has got a variety of different resources that you can use in that particular lesson. Come back to here, looking for one particular thing. Okay, so all of these resources are there. And we have also taken all of these resources and put them into a pre-made lesson plan for you. So I'm going to go back up to this upper left-hand corner and go to my menu. And again, that third option down is resources, but all of these resources, so the students can get to them from their tray at the very bottom of their book. They can get to them by going to the resources tab on the left-hand side. And you will be able to have an option that says plan and present, where you can get to the resources as well. And navigation for this is to just choose, I'll go back to that chapter 6, since that's exactly where we were. I can go into chapter 6. I can look at my chapter overview, and you'll see that this information on the left-hand side is exactly what you are seeing in your teacher's edition. So maybe you're at home and you did not bring your book home, or maybe you don't have one yet. This is a good place to be able to see all of this is the exact same information that you're going to see in your teacher's edition. So everything is right here at your fingertips. A couple of things to show you from a teacher perspective while we are here is that as I scroll down a little bit further here and I look into my get ready for the chapter, when your students do the very beginning, the kind of concept check at the beginning, when we're looking at those prerequisite skills, it is going to give you an intervention planner. And it says in general, if your students, what you might choose to do if your students are struggling with something. So if they are missing some of the prerequisite skills, there are built-in resources that will help you with those prerequisite skills. So if they need intensive intervention, if you're in algebra, geometry, algebra 2, you also have access to something that we have that's called Math Triumphs, which really is for your students who are maybe 2 grade levels below and you need to catch them up. Be sure to look at several of the Math Triumphs resources. Those are definitely going to be very helpful for you. I'm going to scroll back up to the top. And I'm going to switch from chapter overview. Let's go to the chapter lesson. And you'll see that this is laid out exactly the way the book is laid out. We're going to launch the lesson. We're going to teach the concepts. We're going to give students an opportunity to practice. We'll assess what they know. There is built-in differentiated resources, and there are Sketchpad resources for those of you who have students with technology, or you like to utilize technology in your classroom and want to have a little bit more of a dynamic type of situation. You might want to explore some of these Sketchpad resources. So these are activities that students can do. They can do either self-led activities using the student worksheets and the student presentations, and then you'll have the support in the teacher ones. And I'll give you a little bit of a hint. If you have never used Geometry Sketchpad before, I want you to be sure, if you're going to think about using it, go to one of these, go to this little drop down, and I want you to look right here where it says Sketchpad level, and it's going to give you whatever that level is. Be sure that you start with one that is a beginner one, just to make it a little bit easier for you to do. But the student worksheet does tell them really step by step, every one of them, exactly what to do in each one of them. But that's just my little teacher tip, is to probably try to start with one that is at a beginner level. But let me go up here and show you some of the great things that are here for you. So when I go into the launch, there are my objectives, my mathematical background, my suggested pacing, and the math practices are built in. Underneath Teach, it tells you that there is an interactive whiteboard activity. So I will show you exactly what those are, but I want you to see right here these scaffolding questions. As you are working through examples in the book, the examples that are found in the student edition, you are going to see in your teacher's edition that there are scaffolding questions. So think of this as, you can think color-wise, that this is a cautionary color, a calm color, and I call this color go-go green. So this is caution, calm blue seas, and go-go green. But this is a question that as your students are approaching a level of understanding, they should be able to answer. As they are approaching an on-level understanding, this is a question that they should be able to answer. And when you want to take it to the next level with your students, you'll want to use this beyond level type of question that's there. So every single example, every example in the book, 6, 8, 9, 12, is going to give you these scaffolding questions that you can use, ask your students, and it's going to give you an additional example that you can choose to use with your students if you want. Now, you will always also see something over here on the side that says lesson presentation. So every single one of the lessons, grades 6 through 12, is going to give you a lesson presentation, which is just a PowerPoint presentation that you can utilize with your students. I generally suggest that teachers download these ahead of time, and then notice that you do have the ability to move them around. It is your PowerPoint at that point to do whatever you choose to do with that. When I move this into presentation mode, I can quickly hyperlink to different parts of this. And I am using just a wireless mouse, and I can click different parts of this lesson. And it just kind of takes the questions that are inside the book and the extra examples, and it brings them to life in terms of, you know, what I can do in the lesson. And this is one of the things that I like, is that I hope you noticed that the ball kind of came bouncing in. Here's a guided practice question. So maybe I've explained this to my students. I get them to do it on their own. Maybe they have a whiteboard and they hold up what they think the answer is. And then I can just click my mouse, and some sort of way, sometimes it's an arrow that comes in, sometimes it's a ball that bounces, but it will show the examples. It'll show the answers to those examples. Now, or maybe you said, well, I don't want the kids to see the examples. I want to use this as some formative assessment, and they're going to turn it in. You just move to the next slide, and you can turn off that ability for that kind of giving away the answers as they go through. So just to remind, I know that this is something that a lot of teachers really are always looking for, and this is called the lesson presentation, and you can get to it from your resources. So third option down, you can go to your resources and you'll find the lesson presentation. At the middle school, at the 6-8 level, I think they call it something a little bit different. They call it an IWB, an interactive whiteboard lesson, but you will have those, you will find those are going to be there for you as well. So as I scroll down, see if I can find this particular one. It's going to be right here. When I roll over the top of it, it's got the plus sign, and that is my presentation. So you'll see it is just a PowerPoint presentation that you can utilize with your students. It's got all of the essential question, the vocabulary, and again, this is yours. If you want to take some of this out or add things in, you have that ability to do that. I really like the grade 6-8 way that they have done each. Like I said, everything's a little bit different, but for grade 6-8, this is the example that's inside the book, and I can just click and unveil a different part of that each time. So those of you who have been teaching for a while might remember the times when we used to have overhead projectors and we'd write everything out and kind of scoot it down the page. But now this gives you the ability to do this digitally as well. And then the extra examples are built into the situation as well. So that is definitely something that I encourage teachers to look for. And again, it's at the resources, but it is also in your plan and present menu. When you're at any one of your lessons, let's go over here to 6. We'll go to our chapter overview. You can see the chapter content is there, and then you can see the lesson content. And here's my launch, teach, practice, and apply. So everything that you need is going to be right here at your fingertips. You'll have, there's my problem-based learning, and just below that, I'm going to find my PowerPoint presentation is there as well. So I always encourage people to take a look at both of those areas. So you've got your extra examples. When it comes to practice, you're going to have an exit ticket that accompanies each one of the lessons. You're going to have some suggestions on extra practice. And in the student edition, there's always going to be a variety of different question types. So you're going to see some are level 1 type questions, some recall, skills-based questions, some level 2 that might have multi-step, and then level 3 questions are going to be kind of your extended questions that are going to be there. And I always encourage teachers to not just shy away from these. Sometimes you'll see notations that will let you know questions that might be good for a group type scenario as well. When it comes to assess, you're always going to see a ticket out the door, or an exit ticket is going to be provided for you. And then underneath differentiated instruction, there's that kind of chart that I was telling you about, so whether things are on level, approaching, or beyond. And now we're bringing in something that is for English language learners. A lot of times you're going to find different graphic organizers and things that help the language make a little bit more sense as we are going through. So just to reiterate, let me go back up here and I'll close each one of these little tabs out. No matter what lesson it is that you're at, your navigation is going to be here. No matter what lesson, you're going to see the same exact, what I call kind of digital file folders are going to be over here. You can, if you need to copy and paste anything out of these, if you want to put something into your own lesson plans, you do have that ability to copy and paste any of it. But the lesson resources are consistently found in 3 places: at the book level, in the tray across the bottom. It's going to be at the resources level over here on the left-hand side, and then it will also be in your lesson plan level. So 3 places to get to the same resources. And some of you may find you'll find that your experience may be a little bit different from a colleague's based on whatever you are taking a look at over there on the side. Now, one additional part that's here, let me move this back over, is that you can click presentation and it'll automatically download that presentation for you. So you don't have to go find them. If you want those lesson plans, you can go in and get them. Let me come into here and I'll show you, for those of you teaching, close that PowerPoint out. For those of you teaching 9-12, I want to call your attention to something else. There is one of these with each and every chapter. There's not one with every lesson, but there's one with every chapter. And these are some interactive types of lessons. We call them e-lessons. And again, just notice as I roll my mouse over the top of it, it gives me a description as to what it is. But if I were you, I would kind of find exactly where these particular resources are. And you can see, in fact, let me go back up here and I'll show you. If I go to my resources, and I am looking, if I go to even into my keyword search, if you just pull up these ones that say more, you can see all of them, or if you just type in e-lesson, you will see all of the e-lessons that go along with it. So I can click e-lesson, or I can click in the more, I can sort it into these interactive whiteboard resources. And these are some super fun types of just kind of interaction, some digital kinds of things. There's some drag and drop. So I would utilize that probably in my classroom. I'll open up this one on slope and rate of change. But I would utilize these just as kind of a way to change the lesson that we're doing for the day. So here's one where, I mean, maybe you do this as kind of a game format for the kids. They can come into here. So I'm just grabbing some of these and moving them over. So let's say the kids came up and did that, and then they check and they find out 4 are incorrect. So it's just kind of a fun way to do that. It doesn't tell them which ones are incorrect. They actually have to go in and say, oh, it's supposed to be this one. So this is something that can be a lot of fun for students to do, whether it's in kind of a group situation, or I tell teachers all the time, if you don't want the kids getting up, if they're not going at an interactive whiteboard, they could pass the mouse. and we could reset this. And so what's kind of neat about this is you could have teams compete against each other. And so student one goes over and answers a problem. So they get to answer any one that they want. And then they pass the mouse to the next person. And the next person can either change that person's answer or they could drag another one over. And I'm running a timer. And at the end, they get to check and see how they did. So just kind of a way, kind of a fun way with the mathematics for the students. There's going to be different types of activities that they can see here. And you can see that we can bring in different parts that are here. So if you have an interactive whiteboard, be sure that you take a look at these. They have the little plus sign that's next to them. And that's how you can think of them exactly, is that it's an extra resource. It's a positive plus that's there if you wanted to be able to use those. So it's one people don't always see them because they're not necessarily always with lesson 1 or with lesson 3, but anytime you see one of these e-lessons, I encourage you to utilize those with your students. Now, for the last few minutes, what I want to show you is down here underneath assessment. In the assessment library that we have, there is a great kind of how-to guide that's right here. And whenever you open up the assessment center itself, you can see in the upper right-hand corner, there is more help that you can get here. So this will tell you exactly how you can do all sorts of things with it. In a quick nutshell, what I will tell you is that up here in the upper left-hand corner, these are file folders of what I call pure questions. These are questions that students have not seen on any of their homework or any of the pre-made assessments. So if you like to build your own assessment and you just want questions that have not been found anywhere else, you would build utilizing these questions that are up here across the top. And I'll show you how to build one in just a moment. In the lower left-hand corner, this is where you will find all of our pre-made assessments. So if I look at that chapter 6, I can see that my pre-made assessment. So remember I told you that the homework could be graded. Here is the homework. So here's lesson 6-1 homework. And so if you wanted to see what it looked like in a digital experience, you simply drag it over into the workspace and you can see that we have turned it into a digital experience. Of course, we're not going to show the students the answer, that's just there for you, but you can see how we have turned that into a digital experience for the students. So homework practice. Then you're going to see that we have pre-made tests for you. So Form 1 is a test that is all multiple choice. Form 3 is a test that is our higher order thinking questions that are all extended response questions or more in-depth questions. This would be considered below level. Form 3 would be considered above level. 2A and 2B are two parallel versions. They're similar tests with different numbers. This one is multiple choice. 2C and 2D are parallel versions, and they're all short response questions. So they're just different, giving you two versions of those. You will also find for every one of the chapters, we're going to give you a mid-chapter check and some quizzes that go along with it. Now, I'm just going to show you really quickly how easy this is to create an assessment. So if I were to click create a new test, I'll just call it my test or homework or whatever, and I'm just going to build an empty one. And I could come over here to that chapter 6 and I could say, I want to look at questions from Form 2A. So I could find different questions from Form 2A and I could drag those over. I could even add questions directly from their homework if I wanted to put homework questions directly onto this resource. So that is one way, if you know what the questions are that you wanted to be able to build from, that is just one way to do that. I can look at those. I've created those questions. I can make different choices. I can switch them into a multi-select question. I can change the size of the font. I can do all kinds of things. I can even export these. So if I want to use a clicker system or Quizlet or Kahoot, I could move them, into a Word document if I needed to do that. But I do also have the ability over here on the right-hand side to assign this to my students to do. And if they do it online, it will also grade that for me. So you can build an assessment from a test that you have, or I know a way that I would probably start is I might start with form 2B. I can drag that over into my workspace, and then I can come over to here to switch this. I'm looking at all questions, and I can then go to my test, and I can enable multi-select, and I can now come in here and say, I want this question and this one and this one. I want just those questions, and I want to create a new test from those. So it just calls those questions over. And I need to just put it somewhere. So I'll put it into the My Tests folder. And then I created something that is just based on questions that I was looking at first. So it's kind of whether or not you want to select while viewing, or whether you want to start with one that has been pre-made and then pull those individual questions over that you want to utilize with your students. If you build something, you can export it and share with other teachers. You export it, they come over here on the side and they import it. So super easy to share, super easy to edit, to change the fonts, those types of things. And if you want to print it, you can print single versions or multiple versions of the assessments as well. And you can choose, some of them will give you the ability to change just the order, and some of them will give you the ability to change the numbers that are associated with them. So lower left-hand corner, pre-made, upper left-hand corner, additional questions that are not found on any other resource or worksheet. And you can bring those questions in. You can edit the questions if you choose. You can even change the order of the questions, and it will automatically renumber the questions for you. So we are coming up at the very end of our time, but I will tell you, I know a lot of people get very excited about this part. If you click the help in the upper left-hand corner, it will give you great information about how to utilize e-assessment. And you will also find a great how-to guide right here as well. So I encourage you to download both of those, but mostly I encourage you to just click and look at all of the different resources that you have at your fingertips. This is the way that I like to get ready for a particular lesson. So if I was teaching lesson 6-1 tomorrow, I just look at that and I say, all right, these are my resources. I'm going to see them across the bottom of the book. They're going to be in the lesson presentation, or I can add them to my favorites and quickly pull them up for my students. So thank you so much for taking this opportunity to learn a little bit more about Glencoe Math. I hope that today's session has been helpful for you.
Thank you, Shelley. It has indeed been very helpful. You've showed us around a lot of resources as well and how they can manage their classes better. Thank you so much for everything that you've shared with us today.
Absolutely.
And at this point, I know we're at the top of the hour, but if you have any questions for Shelley, please do let us know. We're more than happy to support you with this teaching Glencoe in your class, Glencoe Math. Great session, but need practice to use them. Of course, Ahmed, you're right. It was a great session. Okay, I think, Shelley, everything was very clear. I haven't received any questions. If I've missed on anyone, please let us know now. Otherwise, we can go ahead and end the session. I do want to remind you that we are running back to school webinar series. So we are doing Glencoe Science tomorrow. If your colleagues or you know anyone who's teaching Glencoe Science, then please do register for the session. I will drop the link in the chat box. So here is where you can register for the rest of our webinars. We're towards the end now, so we have the Glencoe Science tomorrow and then an AP session. and I think math intervention, and that's all. But wish you a great school year. Thank you everyone for joining, and thank you, Shelley, for your time today.
You are welcome. Y'all have a great school year.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.